Is Jackson State versus FAMU a rivalry? Zion Keith returns to South Carolina to play for the South Carolina State Bulldogs, and we bid a farewell Friday to Randolph Ross Jr. Oh, yeah, it's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor. Thank you for going on this journey with me, making Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And I want to talk about something that's been going around on the Blue app, yes, Twitter. And it's the conversation of Jackson State versus Florida A&M in football. And it's something that yesterday I tweeted out and I said, you know what, I'm gonna give my 2 cents on this. So I'm gonna give my 2 cents and some. I do not think that Jackson State versus FAMU, the Orange Blossom Classic, I do not believe that that game or that matchup is a rivalry, but I do believe that it has rivalry potential. See, when this conversation first came up, I immediately said, no, this isn't a rivalry. Rivalries, in my mind, hit you immediately, unless you're just not close to the situation. But if you're semi-close to a situation and it hits you immediately, you don't really have to question. If you're close to a situation, you don't have to question. And I did. However, I'd be bullheaded if I didn't at least entertain the idea and actually sit down and think about if this is a rivalry. Maybe I'm just missing it. Maybe I'm not close enough. Maybe I'm not close. I'm SWAT graduate, but maybe I'm not close enough to Jackson State circles, to FAMU circles. Maybe I'm tripping, but I really just thought to myself, and I still came to the conclusion that it isn't, but I came to the compromise that it has the potential to be that. And I want to start off with why I don't think it is, and then we can get into why I think it has the potential. So, rivalries don't have to be based off of competition level, with air quotes around that, right? For my audio listeners. I'm an audio listener. I know I always say for my audio listeners, like, I love y'all too. I'm an audio listener. So thank you to my video people, but also I love my audio people because that's how I, consume my podcast. So I'm not trying to slight y'all when I say, but I do certain visual things that maybe my audio people might not be able to see or obviously won't be able to see. So I just like to let them know. So I have air quotes on competition level because I look at certain games. Oklahoma. So OU, so just so we know where we are. Oklahoma versus Oklahoma State. 90, 19, and 7. That's the all-time record. Texas and Texas A&M. 76, 37, and 5. I'll even give you something that's out of state because those are two state matchups, cool, right? But FAM and Jackson, they're not in the same state. Let's go with LSU and Alabama. That record, as far on the Alabama winning side, is 55, 26, and 5. They even won, I think, eight in a row recently until that 2019 season, 2020 season, or 2019 season. All three of those in my books are still rivalries, even when Alabama was winning every game. Alabama LSU was still a rivalry. And that's because it's not so much about the competition level when debating on what something is a rivalry or what game is a rivalry and what game isn't a rivalry. It's about the way that the fan bases feel about it. It's about the fact that that game holds weight no matter what to those fan bases. See, Alabama could go win a national championship, but if they lost to LSU, it's going to hold some weight. I keep on saying Ohio State because I wrote OSU. But if Oklahoma State knocks off OU, it don't matter what OU does. Same with Texas. When they move to the SEC, if Texas A&M knocks off Texas, it's going to irk them no matter what. it's still going to be that thing in the back of your head where, yeah, I won the national championship, or yeah, I won my conference championship, but I lost to that team. And yes, I'm going to sleep well because I still am the champion, but that's going to irk you. And we have that team, or we have that person, if you're talking about individual sports, as fans, that we like, all right, I don't want to lose to that team, or I got to beat that team, right? Professionally, we be like, oh, I can go 1-15, but if that one victory gonna come against anybody, it's gonna come against that ball club. That's what a rivalry is, and it doesn't need any extra cayenne on it. You don't need to have a big game, and I think that's where people get tripped up, because I had this conversation about the Saints and Buccaneers when I was doing my Saints podcast a couple of years ago. Well, I guess really, well, just a year ago, actually, not even. Um, it's the difference between rivalries and conference games. At the time, it was division games, but we're talking about Jackson State and FAMU. So it's a difference between conference games and rivalries. It's a difference between rivalries and big games. The Orange Blossom Classic last year essentially was the SWAC championship game. Those were the two best teams in the SWAC, specifically the SWAC East. That was the deciding factor of who was going to win the SWAC, right? I think that FAMU would have knocked off PV as well. That would have been really cool to see Willie Simmons do that. But whatever, neither here nor there. A lot of people look at it as those are going to be the two best teams in the SWAC East again, and that's going to be a deciding factor of who could win the SWAC again, maybe. But if that wasn't the case, is this even a conversation? I'm going to answer that question with no. I would love to know what you think. If you think this is a rivalry, let me know down below. But if that game didn't have big time ramifications, we're not talking about this as a rivalry. And that's why it's not a rivalry. Because, like I said, you don't need any big game ramifications. Even if in those three rivalries that I listed, if it meant nothing, we're still looking at the game and saying those fan bases are playing for bragging rights. They really care. And I don't think that Jackson State and FAMU are at that point yet. I say yet because I still think they have rivalry potential. I still think that when you look at these two fan bases and how passionate and how vocal they are, they talk a lot of trash, like a lot of trash, right? Two fan bases. Let's say that for the next 4 years, FAMU and Jackson State are the two best teams in the SWAC East. Not a fan of either one of those schools. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but let's say that it does happen. Over the next 5 years, you have the Orange Blossom Classic deciding the SWAC East champion with two passionate fan bases that are going to talk a lot of trash, who honestly have already kind of started the trash talking. Yeah, that's may not be a rivalry yet, but that's a perfect jump off point. I once said that in one of my episodes here, I once said that basically there are FAMU fans who have expressed that if that game wasn't the first game of the year, they would have beat Jackson State, and they would be in the same position Jackson State was in, and likely saying they would have beat South Carolina State. I said that, not saying that was my opinion, saying that's what I know FAMU people have articulated before. Somebody in the comments from Jackson said, man, I'm sick of hearing that. I can't remember which episode it was, but I'm sick of hearing that. You already hearing that little back and forth. You already hearing that back and forth. If FAMU beat Jackson State this year, and then we just keep flipping, this is the building blocks for a really good rivalry, and something I think will be really fun, because Jackson State and FAMU both got this. And you may think it's bad, you may think it's good. I don't, whatever. They both think they the star, because they both think they are the cream of the crop when it comes to HBCU football, and they are going to vocalize it. They have this idea that, or I ain't gonna say this idea, I've heard people say from both sides, basically, y'all wish y'all was us. And they vocalize it. If this was a group, FAMU and Jackson State be fighting for who the real star is backstage. No, 100%. No doubt about it. If this was a group, Jackson State and FAMU would be fighting for who is the real star of the SWAC, because they both have that chip on their shoulder and say that I'm better than everybody else. Y'all can't touch me. We are the cream of the crop. Everybody, or there's more schools that feel that way. I'm not gonna say everybody. There's more schools that feel that way. Those two are the most vocal that I've seen about it. And they get to face each other every year for the bragging rights of who's the best. This may not be a rivalry, but give it a couple of more years and it will be. Now, going forward, we're going to be talking about Zion Keith. He's returning home to South Carolina State, and he's going to be playing for the Bulldogs after a career at Wake Forest. Let me tell you what he brings to the defending HBCU national champions. But before I do that, I would love to tell you about BetOnline, because BetOnline is the best place for all of your sports wagering. Everything. We just had the NBA draft. I hope you put some money down saying who's going to go number one, who's going to go two, where were these players going to land. If you put some money down, you got it right. I hope that you did it on Bet Online because they're giving you the best odds. They have the NBA futures as far as who the MVP is. You have the NFL futures for who the MVP is. They have so many things. It's not just about present sports. Sometimes it's about looking forward. It's not about what's going to happen tomorrow, what's going to happen in the weekend. It's about what's going to happen in February of 2023. Or you can bet on the College World Series, or you can bet on MLB. They have everything. They're so versatile, in addition to being the fastest and easiest way to wager on all of your favorite sports. Bet online, where the game starts. All right, so keep on rolling on today's episode of Locked on HBCU. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day and part of your daily routine. I do appreciate it. I want to talk about a homecoming of sorts. I'm talking about Zion Keith returning home to the state of South Carolina to play for South Carolina State. He just graduated from Wake Forest in 2022. So, with that being said, we're going to come into a current crop of players. This isn't a trend. This isn't something that I foresee going in the future. It can't really happen. But you're running into some players in the present that are going to be grad transfers with 2 years left of eligibility and a lot of experience. See, Keith has played in 4 different seasons. Let's go through it. So in 2018, he redshirted, but he played in some games. But the situation is basically if you don't play a certain amount of games, you can redshirt that year. And he didn't play that. He didn't hit that threshold. So he got on the field, but he didn't play enough. So he was able to keep his freshman year. He came back the next year, 2019, played, whatever. 2020 does not count. It don't count for nobody. So he had his redshirt sophomore year in a year that didn't count. And now you had last year, which was technically his redshirt sophomore year. However, it was his 4th year in college and 4th year playing. So now you're going to have his junior and senior season, but he's coming to you as a grad transfer. So he has 2 years of eligibility, but due to the pandemic and due to redshirting after playing a little bit, he was able to play in 4 different seasons. This is a very experienced grad transfer. A lot of times you have grad transfers who come in with 2 years of eligibility, but that's because, hey, they didn't play. Just frankly, they did not play. So they don't have the on-field experience that somebody like Zion Keith has. And this is great. It's a homecoming, right? So he's from Florence, went to Wilson, and he's coming back to his home state. And I think for both sides, you're hoping that he returns some of that magic, right? Just some of the magic that came from when he was in the state last. See, he was a good player, solid player at Wake Forest. And you're hoping that you get that as well. But when he was at South Carolina or in South Carolina, magic. I'm talking about regional player of the year. That's the type of player that you hoping to get back. You're not going to get that two-way star. You're not. Because when he was in high school, he was playing wide receiver, he was playing defensive back, and he was pretty good at both of them. He was 1,000-yard receiver. I think had 8 touchdowns or something of the sort. Then he also had a touchdown on defense from a pick six. So you see he did good at both. At Wake Forest, they decided to keep him as a safety, and clearly he did well at that. Now, what I appreciate about him is his style of play. He ain't afraid of contact. Not at all. You see him come down, fill the hole. He's not worried about run support. See, this is me. This is a personal preference. I love safeties who not only don't shy away from contact, they embrace the contact. I love it. I love it. I still love the hard hits. I know that we're not supposed to talk about that all the time, but I still love the big hits. And in today's day and age where the way that you tackle is so scrutinized, to come down and really rock somebody safely for both of you, you got to love it and you have to appreciate it. And I appreciate that in the safety who as a defensive back who is slight. Yeah, you're not slighter, I should say. I don't want to say slight, be slighter than most of the other people. Don't shy away from that. I appreciate that. And in the same way that he was a two-way player in high school, I don't want to make it seem like he's just a run stuffer. No, he also has some good work in the back end. He's also a pass. He's also, excuse me, he also excels in pass coverage. And he had a pick six. It was one that it showed his ability to track the ball. It showed his ability to follow the eyes of the quarterback. It was kind of a scramble drill. And a lot of times I feel like scramble drills work to the advantage of the wide receiver because it's chemistry and it's about knowing what your quarterback's going to do and everything of that nature. And now, even more so than running your route that you already know you're going to run, it's a reactionary game for a defensive back where, yes, you're reacting to that route, but now this is off script and you have no clue what's going to happen. There's no setup. It's really just backyard football. And it's that kind of just off script play, and he got a pick six off of that, showing his ability to not only track the ball, like I said, but when the ball gets in his hand, I told you he was a high school wide receiver, and you can see it in plays like that. I thought that he had a phenomenal performance, or I think he's going to have a phenomenal performance, but hopefully we don't see him a lot because that means he's doing a good job. As a safety, I only want to see you when you're making turnovers or forcing turnovers and maybe the occasional hit in the box. I don't want it to even get to you. I want my linemen and my linebackers to stop it to get to you. And I don't want to see you giving up stuff and see the back of your jersey when you're chasing somebody going deep. So hopefully, cheers. I'm not going to cover this up. Cheers. Cheers to hoping that we don't see Zion Keith that much when he's on the field for South Carolina State, because that's mean he's taking, pretty good care of what he needs to take care of at the safety position. And going forward, we're going to bid farewell to a legend in North Carolina A&T track and field, and that's Randolph Ross, because he has decided to go with his father to the University of Tennessee. We'll go over some of his highlights going forward as we continue with Locked On HBCU. But before we do that, I want to tell you about Rock Auto, because, man, Rock Auto is the greatest and best and just the most efficient place to get your car to get your car worked on. If you need mats, you can get mats. You need pieces, you can get pieces. They can't do the labor for you, but what they can do is sell you the pieces that you need. You go to a mechanic, get the labor done there. Wow. I'm talking about you probably paying the same amount for parts and labor if you buy the parts off of Rock Auto as just the parts if you go to whatever this auto parts store that's closest to your house. That's the decrease in price that you see when you're online, you're comfortable in your chair like I am right now, searching Rock Auto to see whatever you need. You need a muffler, go to Rock Auto. You need some spark plugs, go to Rock Auto. It's cheaper, more comfortable for you, and you don't even have to leave your house. Sounds like a win-win-win to me. Now, when you go to rockauto.com, let them know Locked On in the How Did You Hear About Us section. All right, it's wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU. We bid Randolph Ross Jr. a farewell, and we look at his legendary resume because I know we throw a lot of terms out there lightly, GOAT, greatest, whatever, yeah, whatever. But when we call this man a legend, it's not done lightly. No, he earned that. And we'll see it when you look at his resume and what he accomplished. And you can't think about North Carolina A&T track and field, this era, really any era, and not think of Randolph Ross. The dude is a legendary performer on that track, right? So last Friday, I think it was last Friday. It was last week for sure, but I think it was last Friday or Wednesday. I was talking about how when Alan Johnson got the job, he needs to go to Randolph Ross. Oh, no. Last Friday, I was talking about when Dwayne Ross, I got my days mixed up. When Dwayne Ross got the job in Tennessee, he talked about how his son is wearing orange at this time. He couldn't comment on what the decision was going to be. And I said, look, I likely think he's going to lead in Tennessee. I think a lot of us did. That's his dad. More than just his coach, that is his dad. More than anybody else that was on the North Carolina A&T track and field, either one, women's, men, does not matter. Track, field, does not matter. More than anybody else, he had that special connection, right? So that's not a hot take. That's not something that I really should pat myself on the back for. I said it. I mean, I thought he could return to North Carolina A&T. I thought it was a chance. I wouldn't have been surprised either way. I think I said that too. But I expected him to go to Tennessee on Monday. I came in, we talked about Allen Johnson when he got the job, and I said, look, I'm going directly to Randolph Ross, who I assume has already had his mind made up on whatever he's going to do. But I got to at least try to say, look, you should stay here because of this. At least let you know that you're in good hands if you decide to stay at North Carolina A&T. I got to at least let you know that. I said that on Monday morning. I want to say also Monday morning, Randolph Ross dropped the news that he was going to Tennessee. You got to love it when a news drops right after you record, or news directly I don't want to say contradicting, but I would have obviously left that part out had the news already been dropped by the time I said it. So you gotta love when those things happen. But hey, it is what it is. I cannot complain about it. But it was like, oh, okay, of course. So I went in the comments and just basically like, this was recorded before and everything of that nature. But it's all good. Y'all show love. But with Randolph Ross, not he's in Tennessee. I want to talk about what he did when he was at North Carolina A&T. And like I said, the impact, or you can't think about him or North Carolina A&T track and field without thinking about him. You can't. The impact that he has left on his programming is indelible because he was an Olympian. You can't tell me that you're going to look at a program and not think of the Olympian that was on there for 3 years. You can't. North Carolina A&T has risen to number 1 in the nation at points in the last year. You can't tell me you're not thinking about the Olympian. He's easily, at least for Americans, right? So I know Miss Grace, probably in her country, she's gonna be the biggest because she's also an Olympian. But and she was out passing out North Carolina A&T gear in her home country. I wish I knew what it was, and I have an idea, but I don't want to slip up and say the wrong country. So but with Randolph Ross, man, in America, he's an Olympian who runs at a HBCU. It's one of the first people you think of. And it's not even just that, because that's something you think about before you even get to his resume. You got to understand, he's been the Southeast Region Athlete of the Year for the last 2 years in indoor. Last year it was, or this year, he was the Player of the Year or Athlete of the Year in outdoors. He's been acknowledged for being great. But let's talk about what he did on the track to get that name. And they went into the Big South this year, and it's crazy because his name is littered. In North Carolina A&T is littered all through the Big South all-time record book. And they ain't even going to be there next year. They only came in for 1 year. They came in 1 year, showed, hey, we can put our name in the record book, and they leaving. But let's talk about what he did. He's a part of the 4x1 team. That is the 2 best times in Big South history. He's a part of the 4x4 team who had the 4 best times in Big South history. Those are team awards, so let's give love to the unit. I'm going to be very clear. Randolph Ross is one leg of that 4x4. But he is part of it, and we're talking about him today. And that's 6 right there. 6 thing that that he is on the top of the record book for. Nobody else. To have 4 races at the top of the record book is crazy. That's crazy in 1 year. Like, we're talking about 1 calendar year, 1 seasonal year, excuse me. And then he also ran the fastest 400 time in conference history. But that's nothing new for him. He has 3 of the top 10, 15, 400 times in NCAA history. This is somebody who continuously has one-upped himself and just did in his, excuse me, has one-upped himself and continued to push it. So even when he doesn't best that time from 2021, he's still pushing and saying, all right, well, I'm going to get this Big South record, or I'm going to go ahead and win this event again. I'm going to win this indoors. I'm going to win this outdoors. Doesn't matter. And I'm going to end it with this, right? This like my guy Blaze always say, this the coup de grace. He is one of only 2 men in NCAA history to have a top 5 all-time time in the 400 meters indoors and outdoors. Only 2 people have ever done that. And Randolph Ross, win at North Carolina A&T, is one of those guys. I bid you farewell, and you are 100% a legend. I bid you a farewell as well, and I think you are a legend. To all of my listeners, I'm talking to you right there. I think you are a legend. I appreciate you for making Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And remember to come back on Monday. We're going to be right back at it Monday, Wednesday, Friday for the meantime. And speaking of the meantime, If you're looking for me, you can find me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.